And Alex, always great to have you on. So, first of all, thanks for that. Second of all, you had the State of the Braves event last night. No one threw a shoe at you or anything, did they?
No, you know what? I got to tell you, I was myself and our president, Derek Schiller, went, and he asked me before. He's like, "Hey, you want to just meet there?" I'm like, "Nah, why don't you come? You could be the human shield for me." But everyone was good. You know what? This is our A-list group. These are people that buy season tickets. They love the Braves. They've always been very good to me. Very respectful, very kind. They asked a bunch of questions, good ones. And, like anything, I was as candid as I could be. And it's a really great event, and the turnout is awesome. And look, you guys see it. You're right across from us. I mean, our fan base and attendance year after year and the support we get is off the charts. So it's actually a really great event.
Was there any moment when somebody suggested chicken wire in front of you guys, like you were in some honky-tonk, perhaps?
No, you know what? It was very, there was kind of, I'd say, look, this was my 8th one, right? So it was exactly the same as all the others. You always get asked about if you're going to sign some guys long-term. That's always part of it. That's always a standard. You're going to get those. I was asked about what do you think the number one issue with the team has been, and my response was the offense. Obviously, we've had issues all over the place, but if I had to pinpoint one and you pin me down to one area, I'd say from an offensive standpoint would be the one thing that jumps out at me. And I was more illustrating the fact that we're 29th in one-run games. The White Sox are 30th. And, before last night, I think we were 9 and 19, so now we're up to 10 and 19. But, obviously that's, if you score a few more runs, obviously you could say, well, if you hold leads or things like that, sure. But we don't give our relievers and starters even that much margin for error. And it's just, the offense is something that we count on. It's been part of our identity for years, and that's something we need to get back to.
All right. You have what they call in the business a hard out, so we're going to get to it. And I'm not an A-list member, so buckle up, Anthopoulos, because it comes.
Break out the wallet, man.
I'm gonna go right to the top, and if I have to work my way down, I'll work my way down.
You know what, though? It's interesting, though, Chris. I see you in those club seats.
Yeah.
The first row, eating for free.
Yeah.
You definitely got a really good gig. Why would you spend any money?
Exactly.
Listen,
now
by the way,
catching on, Anthopoulos.
Yeah,
there you go.
I've spent 62 years figuring out how to get by.
They have streets named after guys like you, Dimino. They're called One Way.
All right, listen to me, Anthopoulos. Here's the deal. I'm going to start from the top. Let's rip it off. Is there anything you're mad about right now, 71 games into the season?
The one loss. No doubt about it. I expressed that to the fans last night too. I take a lot of pride in this job and the responsibility of it. I mentioned to them, I said, you look around the room, everyone's wearing Braves caps, skier, shirts, this, that. They live and die with the team. They support it. I'm a sports fan. I talk about it with you guys all the time. I know what it means to be a sports fan. So I take it personally that, it's on us to put out a good product year in and year out. And look, it's very difficult to be a very good team year in and year out, to be a postseason team year in and year out. But that's our expectation, and that's the bar that we've set. And look, 7 years in a row, I'm very proud of that. And a World Series, of course, and 6 divisions and all that stuff is great. But you don't carry it over, right? There's no, you don't get to carry over the equity. You start over at the beginning of each year. And with the payroll we have, with the support that we have, I expect us to be better. And I announced this to the fans last night because I've been asked, media asked you and so on, are you selling this and that? We're not selling. So, look, a month from now, we end up, 30 games under or something crazy. I guess I would reconsider. But I've been in the postseason personally. I'm talking for myself, totally selfishly, 10 seasons in a row. I don't remember what it feels like to not be contending. And we've got a talented club. It hasn't shown itself clearly. These next 2 weeks leading into the All-Star break, and just really going in the beginning of July, playing the Mets a bunch, the Phillies, and then even, that last little stretch, we play the Cardinals and so on, going into the All-Star break are really important for us. And as a result, we moved the rotation around. There's definitely a sense of urgency. There has been, but even more so now. And Snitz made this comment in his media scrums that, we're trying to win every game at this point. And look, I think just more of a big picture is you're trying to win every series, right? So winning game one's nice. You want to make sure you win one of the next 2. You'd love to sweep like anything, but you want to try to win one of the next 2 and win the series and just continue to win series and play good ball and give yourself some momentum and then try to be able to add at some point. If it's prior to the deadline, great. I've been active now trying to get things done. I obviously haven't been able to accomplish that yet, but definitely want to be in a position to try to add it at the trade deadline.
All right. We talk about a team's personality. Do you think of it that way? Do you assess a team's personality as the season's going on?
Yeah, and you know what? I got asked that. Again, I'm not trying to rehash the A-list because, if you want to be A-list member, you got to sign up. But, one of the things I get asked, and I get asked every time, this is my 8th year here, right? So anytime we're scuffling, right, or we're not playing well, and look, the other 7 seasons, we still got there, right? So I get asked about, are there enough leaders in the clubhouse, leaders on the coaching staff, all that type of stuff. And to me, and I get it, and I explain this as well. When you're not winning and you're not playing up to your capabilities and your potential, it's human nature to say why. I want answers. I want to know why. And I don't believe in shrugging your shoulders and saying, it's just baseball. It happens. But we want to point to something, right? So sometimes you point to, is their leaders, this and that. And, I've heard that for years and years and years and years. And if you're playing well, you don't hear it. But if you really trace back even the last few years, like I've heard all the narratives, right? So 2021, I heard it. We were under 500 through August, right? Really, really rough first half of the season, really. First 4 months of the season. That team had Travis d'Arnaud behind the plate, Freddie Freeman at first base, Dansby Swanson at shortstop, Ozzy Albies, Charlie Morton, Max Fried, Austin Riley, Will Smith. I mean, guys that are great leaders. Josh Tomlin. We had great leaders. Ron Washington, Eric Young. I've heard of that. They were all on that team. We were under 500 through August, and they were great, having great seasons, great leaders, great clubhouse great clubhouse individuals. But at the end of the day, it took until August and adding some other guys and so on to finally to get it going. Obviously, we lose Freddie in 21, Hall of Famer, MVP. We won 101 games for the first time in 20-plus years. We lose Dansby after 22. And again, awesome player, perennial all-star, elite defender at short, probably the best defensive shortstop in the game. Win 104 the next year. And then obviously the years after that, we've lost Wash and EY. And I don't want to take away from any of the people that I mentioned. They're phenomenal. They're great. But the point is that if you build a good organization, then you hope to build a good organization, you have to be able to withstand player losses, coaching losses. Look, you're going to lose players, just guys getting hurt, or you're going to have guys that have bad seasons, or guys will leave, whether it's trade or free agency. So, I'd love to tell you, hey, you need to add this person or that person. You need 25 players. You need 26 players. And that's what happened in 21. We had amazing players, but we didn't have enough, right? We weren't deep enough. We had all-stars and Hall of Famers having phenomenal years, and Dansby and Albies and Riley and Freddie and Morton and Fried. Great, great years. But they can't do it alone. And we had to add, and we needed to get deeper. And that's ultimately what got us over the hump. And look, right now, I'd say a lot of it is going to take internal improvement, right? We have a lot of players playing below their career norms. If you look at the back of the baseball card, like Snit has talked about, a lot of guys are not playing the way they have in the past. And they're capable, they're young, but, we need that to happen, no doubt about it. So, but I would say if I could pick one thing from an offensive standpoint, we're capable of more. I believe it's certainly in there, and it's going to come at some point. But we do have some streaky players at the same time. But, again, these next 2 to 3 weeks are pretty important for us.
Alex Anthopoulos, President, GM of the Braves, with us on the Loud Security Systems Newsmaker line. You talk about 21. Does this team need a Jock Peterson type of guy to not necessarily shake things up in the clubhouse, but maybe wake things up in the clubhouse?
Yeah, so look, I got to, this is all things I talked about last night. So by design, when we brought in Jock and Stephen Vogt on back-to-back days, exactly by design, and those individuals specifically. So I personally knew Jock Peterson when I was in Los Angeles. He'd come up to my office sometimes in the off season and hang out. And this type of guy, when you see him, he puts a smile on your face. And obviously, fans got to know him for 2 to 3 months here during that great run. But at the time, again, we had Wash, phenomenal leader, Freddie, phenomenal leader, Dansby Swanson, phenomenal leader, Travis d'Arnaud, phenomenal leader, Will Smith, Riley, all these guys that are awesome clubhouse guys. But we were scuffling. And our clubhouse was flat at the time. It was flat. And when we acquired Jock, I told him, I said, hey, it's a little flat right now. I need you to be you. Bring the energy, bring what you bring. I didn't talk about his performance or any of that kind of stuff. It was, hey, what you bring to the clubhouse. And the next day, by design, I didn't personally know Stephen Vogt, but he was known, and it was at the end of his career. He was a backup in Arizona, but phenomenal clubhouse guy. Prankster, joker, funny, brings people together. And I remember calling him and saying, our clubhouse is flat. And I can tell you, when we got Shane Green back early in 21, I was trying to spark it a little bit. He even said, man, this clubhouse is flat. We had all these great inspirational leaders that play the game right, that do, and they couldn't do it alone. And, and ultimately, I'm not saying Jock and Vogt were the sole reason, but those guys, I think, signaling to the clubhouse that we're buying, I think was important. They absolutely added a lot, and then we were able to continue to add with Rosario, Soler, Duvall, and you talk about depth. We added 3 starting outfielders, and Jock as well 4. So we just added a lot more depth to the lineup. You're only playing, there wasn't a DH then, right? So you're only playing 8 guys. So the fact that we're adding that many position players just goes to show you how thin we were at the time, even with phenomenal players. So our clubhouse now, no, it has nothing to do with that. I just went on this last road trip, and that's the time when you really get a sense when things aren't going well. You start looking, are people griping? Are they complaining? Are they pointing fingers? Whether it's here, there, wherever, there's none of that stuff going on. And that's when you normally start looking for things. We're just not playing well. Guys are absolutely frustrated, definitely expect more of themselves. But the group has stayed together. And when you think about it over the years, not that we've been through exactly this, but we've been through tough times, right? We've been below 500. We've had bad streaks and so on. And we found a way to dig out of it because we have high character and a really good group there. So I can't guarantee it, of course. I want us to get going, to be able to get on a streak. But we've seen things turn and change. But the clubhouse is, no one's excited when you're losing. You're not going to walk in there. But it's not. It's very stable, I would say, and it's really focused on trying to win. And that's why I still have a ton of belief that we can get it going, but we need better performances.
They keep score every night. How often do you assess manager, coaches, the guys who aren't playing? What's your assessment, and when does that happen for you?
You assess everything daily. You're assessing every single thing daily, right? You're assessing every single day. You're evaluating, right? Every time you watch games, right? Everything, you're reviewing. You're not just turning it off and saying, hey, I'm going to go check out for a month and I'll see you in a month, and then kind of see where everything's at, right? So you're assessing all the time. You're in constant communication. You're down there every day. So during the season, that's just the way it goes. Just like, same thing. We're assessing. We made a decision on the third base coach, who we love and is still in the organization and has done phenomenal infield work. We have arguably the best infield in baseball, with the work that Walt Weiss and Matuisopo had done. But again, we're assessing, and, third base for us, we needed to do better, and it's just like anything else. You guys were talking about the closer role before I came on. Guys get moved out of those roles when they're not getting the job done. Guys get moved down in the lineup when they're not getting the job done. Guys get benched. Guys get released. Guys get traded. So third base is the closest you're going to get to being a player. You're impacting runs in the game immediately. And if ultimately we think we can do better, or it's something that it's not up to par and we can't live through some growing pains, we decided to make the move.
How do you assess the job Snit has done thus far?
I think he's done a great job. And I understand when you lose, people are going to be critical and so on. And, and that's the one thing no one sees, is that we're not playing well, clearly. We're not playing up to expectations. A lot of disappointment. That goes without saying. There's no drama. It's very stable. And I'm telling you, I've been on bad teams. I've been on teams that things don't go well, and I see finger pointing. You see media reports. You see this. You see that. We don't have that because it's real. It's stable. And not one player, I've seen it before, where people start complaining about this or that or whatever. It's a very stable group. And look, certainly people are going to complain about in-game moves. People are going to complain about trades and acquisitions that I make, right? That's part of the job, right? He's not going to bat 1,000 with each move that he makes. And like anything else, a closer saves the game. No one's coming up to him and saying, hey, great job. He's expected, right? Stitt makes some good moves. We win the game. No one's going to come up and say, great job. The moves that don't work out, just like in acquisitions and trades, or a third base coach or a closer, those are the ones that are going to stick out, right? And if you're not playing well, the level of frustration rises, and that's part of the job, right? That's just the reality of it, right? When we're playing well, you don't hear complaints. So that's expected, and I said this in some other interviews when I was in Toronto. It really struck me. We traded for David Price at the trade deadline. He was a frontline starter with Detroit, and he got there, and he was amazing for our clubhouse. But he put a sign up above his locker, and it said, if you don't like it, pitch better. And my view of all this stuff, criticism and so on, if you don't like it, play better. Excuses, explanations, no one cares, right? It's about results. And all we can worry about and focus on is that. Still have to do interviews and be respectful and all that, but we need to win games.
All right, let's go through some things quickly. I don't know what in means, but were you in on Devers?
I would say the following, because actually there's a few things. I got asked about that too last night. So a few things on that. I had a reporter yesterday send me some tweet of somebody, you guys can put it together, that put out some report that they called us and asked for Ozuna and Murphy, this and that. When I say not a crumb or a speck or a morsel of that is accurate, not a crumb or a speck or a morsel is accurate. So I have no problem, and Chris, you know this, if people want to say an opinion, hey, we should have done this, we should have signed this person, traded for this person, opinion pieces, no problem, But when you report things as fact that are totally fabricated and false, that crosses the line to me. Now, if you have a source and you say, hey, my source said, and you get burned, I'll roll with that. So I would say the following to you, that anytime a great player is potentially available and out there on the market, it is our job to, one, know, and two, to inquire. May not be a clean fit for us at this time. However, you never know. There could be three-way and so on. So I would tell you that we were aware of his potential availability for the last month.
Okay.
We were aware of what was going on. We were aware. But in terms of reports of offers or anything like that, never happened.
It never got to that.
Not even close. So phone calls, this, that, none of that kind of stuff, absolutely not. So what some teams are saying, hey, I had no idea, this and that. We had an idea, and that is, in my view, that is our job. I'd never want to be in a position to say, whoa, that came out of nowhere. I had no idea. Then it's a fail on my end. So we've been aware of this for 3 to 4. I'd say this. We've been aware of this since sometime in May.
Right. When they have to take a plane out to Kansas City as the ownership group, there's an understanding that, hey, if you want to make a phone call, you make a phone call because it could be the good time. What do you think about Jurickson Profar, the guy?
You know what? I don't know him well enough, right? We had such a short period with him. He got along great with his teammates.
Do you feel
spring
burned?
Training. We had him for a week.
Do you feel burned?
Sorry?
Do you feel burned?
I don't. I guess I'd say this is that I don't know that I use terms like that, right?
Okay.
Look, I'm absolutely disappointed, no doubt about it. I mean, that goes without saying. Look, I have a little more context about it after talking to him, talking to the league. We're not involved in that stuff, right? We don't know anything about it until it happens. So, I certainly have more context about it after talking to him and so on. Look, at the end of the day, it's his responsibility. It's his responsibility, what he does off season, what he's doing to his body and so on. Was it, absolutely not happy about it, disappointed, of course. But look, I mean, he's not the first person to go through something like this. Obviously, it's not something you want to happen, but we're going to support him.
Does he get a clean slate? Is this?
Yeah, he's going to get a second chance. Sure. Look, we've been through stuff like this before, and again, it's not the same context at all or scenario. But Marcell Ozuna, to me, was the greatest comeback in sports with what went on and what happened and so on. So back to All-Star games. I believe, at least from what I observed, he's beloved by the fan base. Definitely beloved by his teammates. So, look, we had Ramon Laureano on this team last year who had an incident as well a few years ago when he was on the A's, and he was really well liked in our clubhouse. I talked to Sean Murphy and Matt Olson before we brought him in and so on. And again, I'm not condoning any of this by any stretch, but again, there's different contexts, scenarios, backgrounds on all of this stuff. I don't know, what I'm actually allowed to say and not say,
okay.
But I was able to get a lot more insight when I was able to speak to the league and also to speak to him. But the bottom line is it's his responsibility, and he failed on that.
Do you think teams think or smell you as a seller, as in, here's the phone call, I'll say Chris Sale, could be the greatest chip in all of baseball?
Zero. So I've seen the speculation, and that's why it's completely ridiculous to me. So we are not selling, especially someone that has club control beyond the current year. Will not happen. And I never make definitive statements unless I'm going to stick to them. So once you make definitive statements and then you go back on them, you're a liar and you're done. So will not happen. Bold, italicize it, caps, and so much so that I'm trying to make a trade now, very hard right now to make a trade in June, just to signal to everybody that, hey, we will not sell. So again, you get to July, the end of July.
2001 Shaq, 2025.
Things are completely changed. I guess, you would reevaluate again, but you'd have to be extreme. But, we're built to win. Our expectations are to win, and our expectations are to go for it the entire time.
Listen, we know you got to run. I apologize. I got to ask you one more question. How do you address the people that say not enough was done to address shortstop and or the bullpen?
Well, I would tell you this. The shortstop piece, there's no doubt. Nick Allen is, I'd say, probably the best defensive shortstop in baseball right now. There's no doubt the bat is light. We knew that. He knows that. It's always, that's just reality of it. I would tell you is look at the offseason and the shortstops that were traded, acquired, signed. And I would ask, and this is not an arrogant comment, but I would ask, would at this time, and again, it's a small sample. We're 3 months, 4 months into this thing, 3 months, I guess. Would those have been the right move? So you can't force a deal if it's not there, and you can't just say, well, in this offseason we need shortstop. This is the best one available in trade or signing, and let's just do it at all costs, especially if you're making a long-term signing because you're getting married. In terms of the bullpen, from our standpoint, look, the biggest change has been obviously Iglesias was so incredible last year. We're up there in blown saves, last or second to last, something like that. And look, I love Rysel. I think his stuff looked awesome last night. I think he's going to absolutely turn it around. That's been a big part of this thing, right? So, if all of a sudden things start to change and so on. So I guess in theory you can look back and say, was there something that we could have said, Rysel's going to struggle, trade him, do this, do that? I mean, we didn't. That was no scenario. We thought he would struggle like this at the beginning of the year. He's been so durable, so consistent, and so on. So I still think we have a lot of upside to this bullpen. I think the rotation's obviously done a nice job, which helps the bullpen in terms of carrying innings. But I do think Rysel being able to turn it around and get the thing going will definitely straighten things out.
All right, we know you got to go. We're on until 2:15 today. We're on here tomorrow. Just pick up the phone. Call.
Anytime. I'll see you in the seats today.
All right. I'll see you down there.
It's an open door policy.
I'll buy you a drink.
Right.
I'll buy you a drink.
Have a nice. Does you have someone coming over to feed your grapes and stuff while you're sitting there?
No, Robbie every once in a while comes over and says another drink. I'm like, hell yeah, another drink.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, guys.
See you, Alex. Thanks again for the time. Alex Anthopoulos, President, GM of the Braves. The man sees everything.